Good evening, everyone. I have 6 o'clock now. I'd like to welcome everybody to the October 9th meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. And at this time, I think Alderman Aster, you have the prayer tonight.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Kenny Monroe to please step forward, please, and do our prayer tonight. Kenny, I hired this young man in January of 2002, and he has progressed to the rank of fire engineer and serves as the fire department chaplain now. And also, I have to say he worked about 144 straight hours during Hurricane Florence. So thank you very much, Kenny.
God bless you.
Thank you.
May we please bow while I pray. Dear wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for support and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved, useful work, for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibility. Thank you as well for freedom to embrace you. Thank you for loving us, even so from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scripture, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authority, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order, justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of the city officials. And Father, I pray for all those assembled at this meeting, to include the citizens of this city. I am asking you, with gracious, grant them wisdom to govern throughout the conflicted interests and issues of our time, a sense of welfare, true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice, righteousness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their tasks. I pray for the agenda that's set before them today. Please give them assurance on what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work around our beloved city of New Bern. It is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bengal.
Here.
Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Aster.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay, this time, if it would be agreeable with the board, I would like to amend the agenda and we have some real specialists here tonight that have some expertise in hurricanes. And I would like to get them up first to some of the concerns of our citizens and of the board might be met by some of the comments they have to make. And is that agreeable to the board?
Yes, sir.
Have that in the form of a motion, second.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Bingle, seconded by Alderman Aster. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. The first person I would like to get to come up and introduce himself, Michael Robb. If you would come up, give us your title, what you've done in the past, the 22,000 homes that were affected by Hurricane Sandy, and tell us again today. You were telling me about the SBA program and some other things, and some of your experience you found with dealing with Hurricane Sandy and what we should be concerned about here in New Bern.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate your guidance, your leadership, and from the presentation you made this morning, your heart and soul is truly here in this community, and guidance and disaster recovery always begins at the top. So the community should be very much at ease knowing that there's good leadership. With that, if I may turn my head a little bit, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Michael Rabb. I'm from Freeport, Long Island. October 29th in 2012 was a life change for myself when Hurricane Sandy came and affected my community of 40,000 people. At the time, I was working for the Nassau County Office of Housing and Community Development, and I was assisting with the coordination of homeless prior to the hurricane. The day of the hurricane, I was called to be the shelter manager for my local college, 1,200 families, and I came home to a destroyed home. I had 6 feet of water in my house. My house was put off its foundation. It was unlivable, and life has never been the same for me since. I go to work the next day, and my county executive says, "Congratulations, you are the storm recovery liaison for Hurricane Sandy." I have serviced and communicated with over 22,000 affected homes on Long Island. I have lectured all over the island to hundreds of people at a time, talking about what it means to move forward with life and with disaster recovery. I'm also a graduate of the FEMA's Emergency Management Institute's Advanced Academy, which gives me tremendous insight into pre as well as post-disaster planning. And again, congratulations to emergency management and your staff, and especially people who put in hundreds of hours at a time. What I did want to do, if I could please, is I have what I call my top 10 of things that we have experienced through Hurricane Sandy that affect no matter where you are in this country at times of disaster. And I would like to just touch on a few of those right away if I could. The first one, believe it or not, is mental health. Emotional. Now you could see right now that I almost broke into tears, okay? I have cried at almost every meeting that I have ever gone to, and it's because of the love I have for each and every person that's going through this the same way I am. Faith-based support is never more important than it is today. I don't care what faith. God is good. God will bring you through this. God brought me through it. Amen. Okay, so the first thing is reach out to clergy. Reach out to your local organizations of mental health. There are federal funding that will come available through the state for mental health assistance and counseling. Build teams. On Long Island, we had a program called Project Hope, and I'd be more than happy, Mayor, to provide you with that. We had 150 social workers that were trained specifically, and we called them disaster caseworkers. These people were trained in the knowledge of how to do recovery paperwork, but they were social workers. They would sit and hold your hand. They'd tell you to calm down, think towards the future. Reach out to your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, because if you don't hear from them, something's wrong. Now, myself, I'm a cave dweller. What does that mean? At the time of the disaster, everybody else started going out and fixing their homes. I was scared. I didn't trust. I stayed in, so to speak. It wasn't until those caseworkers sat me down and said, "Yes, I know, Mr. Rabb, you're helping all these other homes, but stop for a moment. Help yourself." I didn't help myself. For 4 years, I helped everybody else, and then I faced my own needs. So mental health, please, no matter how strong you are, no matter how sharp and how much you act as if out in public, we're hurting. Hold each other. Help each other. Reach out for the strengths that you have that somebody might not have. Reading. Believe it or not, the forms you're going to get have tiny letters on it. Some people can't read that well. Sit down with a neighbor and read through the paperwork with them. Guide them to attorneys and lawyers and accountants. So that's my first one, is mental health. Number 2, take photos of everything. I know it's a little late for me to say this now, but for those people who are still throwing things out, before you put them on the sidewalk or as you put them on the sidewalk, take photo inventory of all your items that you're losing. A lot of the grant programs, a lot of insurance companies are going to ask you to prove what you lost, especially if you had personal property insurance. So as I drive around, there's all kinds of equipment and clothing and couches out in front of people's homes. Well, 6 months from now, when the insurance company says, "Prove it," where's your photographs? Where's your receipts for that type of items? If you are displaced and you are staying somewhere other than in your own home and you are paying for that, whether it be renting a room in somebody's home, whether it be a motel, get receipts and keep them. If you're paying cash, take receipts, because when the funding comes for reimbursement for emergency housing, you'll have your documentation ready. Grants. One of our biggest problems, Mayor, was that the grants in New York State were set with specific deadlines. But unfortunately, the deadlines were on the forms, not in the newspapers. They weren't in the radio. So we had thousands of people, I'm using this word carefully, at the 22,000 homes that got damaged, 10,000 didn't apply. They missed the deadlines. And then it was a horrible experience, because we have communities now where we have a house lifted, a house down, a house lifted, a house down. Looks like ugly teeth. So we want to make sure that people are more attentive to deadlines and requirements of those applications. Contractors. We have 425 claims as of right now on Long Island for contractor fraud, in excess of $50,000. Make sure that your contractors are licensed in the specific jurisdiction that you live in. Make sure that they have insurance, workman's comp, disability insurance. But don't just look at their letterhead where it has a license number and it says it's insured. You have to call their insurance company. You have to call the city building department. Are they licensed? And here's another thing. Are they licensed today? Because last month they got their license, they got in trouble, but they're still going out there and selling until they get caught. Also, money. Don't give somebody all the money up front. Give them a little at a time. Mutually set benchmarks. In other words, think of your project along the way and mutually agree, I'll give you money when you do this. And that this can be inspected, hopefully, by the building department or some kind of an expert's jurisdiction that says it's being done correctly. Okay? Sometimes if you're doing a very large development project, you might even want to have that contractor bond it, insure it, that they're not going to walk away from you. Rebuild better. Rebuild smarter. One of the problems I had with my home is my mom just got through having spinal surgery and she can't climb steps anymore. What does that mean? Well, if I'm elevating my house and I'm going up to 9 feet plus 4 foot freeboard, in other words, I'm going up 13 feet on my house. Imagine how many steps that is. Think about what that impact could do to a person, not only somebody with special needs, but think about yourself as you age through your life. When you plan, think about, instead of steps, maybe ramps. Think about the possibility of lifts and elevators in a time when you're building. Think about when it comes time to replace that air conditioning compressor that's on the side of your house down and around. No. When you replace it, put it up on a platform. The boilers, the electric systems, upstairs. In other words, think to build smarter as we move forward. For every dollar you spend today on preparation for the future, you're saving $8 to $9 in future costs. Watch your foundations. Build smarter with piles, build with flood vents. And one of the things I cannot talk about here because I don't know your building codes. However, watch the requirements of FEMA. Okay? Because when it comes time for flood insurance again, you want to be flood insurance compliant. Because if your house is elevated to that higher level, your flood insurance is almost, we're paying about $6,000 to $7,000 a home right now for flood insurance. But if you lift your house, it's about $450 a year. So think about the savings from one versus the other. Mold, oh my goodness. The silent killer, and I use that word carefully. Mold is not just play with a little bit of bleach so that the colors change on it. Get rid of it. One of the things I have to warn you about it, I'm not using any specific corporate name, however, there are companies that are coming in, the vultures, they fly in from all over the country, and they're all here to help. But when it comes to the mold remediation,
There's very specific chemical formulas that they spray with. But if they're coming in from out of state and they only have 150 gallons of this stuff with them, and instead of diluting it 2 to 1, they go to 1.5 to half. Yeah, they go to a half. Well, what happens is the mold comes off the wall, but it's not coming off in the wall or out underneath. Make sure that you're using quality contractors and they understand the value of doing a good job. Mortgages. I just stopped by at the Wells Fargo bank tent that they set up here, and they, like very many other banks, do set up disaster desks. And if you don't have your mortgage company in town, you could call up and ask for the disaster desk. Explain to them what you're going through. Explain that you have a huge amount of expenses moving forward, and you might actually need 2, 3, 6 months without paying your mortgage. And what they do is they take that value and they put it at the end of your mortgage. Okay? Or they'll refinance you. Or you might actually have to take out a loan with a construction component to it. But talk to your mortgage now, before you're late, or before you make you miss your second payment. The sooner you let your mortgage company work with you, the better your product is in order to refinance or whatever it might be. And they don't give mercy to your credit score. So that's why it's so important to communicate way in advance. Volunteers. I love them. Thank volunteers as you see them. But volunteers don't charge money. Okay? Be careful. We had a lot of volunteers that said they were going house to house, and then at the end they said, well, could you give our church or our organization a donation? They don't do that. Okay? If somebody wants to do it out of their heart, that's one thing, but there are people that are reaching out for money. Volunteers do not charge discounts. That was the most important part. Also, free carding. The municipality gets reimbursed by FEMA for carting of debris. You will find businesses that will come by and say, I will cart your materials away for free. Be very careful, because a lot of them become illegally dumped. They dump where contaminated stuff is not supposed to be. Sometimes they'll take it and they'll try to sell some of the stuff that you have with personal information in those piles of mess. Okay? So if you're going to use a carter other than municipal, take a picture of the license plate so if God forbid something does go wrong, you have somebody to go back to and track that down and provide the information to even the police if you need to. The one thing that I did want to bring up, which is going to be coming down the pike soon, is small business loans. I noticed there was a flyer that was just handed out here, and it's actually a very helpful flyer. But I do want to mention one thing to you. You do have grants that are coming in through, what would that be, community block grants? Please understand something. If you're going to get a grant to assist you, SBA loans are considered something called duplication of benefit, which means if I take a loan for $10,000 and a grant comes out, and that grant would normally give me 20, they're going to say, no, you got 10,000 from SBA, even though it's a loan that you must pay back, okay? They'll deduct that from what the grants are going to give you. So an SBA loan helps in some ways if you're not insured and you're not expecting grant money. But when you're expecting grant money, it can come into a duplication of benefits situation. There's one other advantage, though. If you are taking out an SBA loan for your home's personal contents, not the structure, that is not duplication of benefits if, and only if, on your SBA loan application, you put the words loan for personal contents. Otherwise, the document won't say that on it, and then the grants will come back and say, why did you not do that? Photographs of documentation. Many of you, like myself, I don't want to go into this. I lost so many photographs, all my documents, my college, my graduate diplomas. I lost everything. I wish I had taken that wet stuff and taken photographs of some of them. Looking back, it's a hard thing to try to rebuild. But again, if there's documents or photos that have been damaged, at least try to take a photograph of them so that as they further deteriorate or as they become moldy and you have to get them out of your house, there are services that do fix damaged paperwork documents, but I'm only letting you know there's a time and place where, you just have to save certain things, your deeds and all that kind of thing.
Michael, let me see if does any of the board members have any questions you want to ask?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anything? And if you would, you were fixing to go back, you were going back up to Long Island tomorrow?
Yes.
But you're coming back down when?
I'll be back down here in about 6 to 8 days. I'm possibly being deployed to Hurricane Michael tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, does the board have any questions or anything? We do have several other speakers, but again, the city of New Bern is trying to give our residents as much information as we can, and there's some more speakers. And so if anybody, I'm sure Mike will be glad to help you. And if you would give us, again, I have your contact information, yes. But we can't thank you enough for having been through. We know what you went through with Sandy, and so again, we really appreciate it.
Mayor, if I could just throw out and extend an offer to you. Unfortunately, I just did this extemporaneously, as you could see. I do have a very, very professional PowerPoint presentation that won an award through FEMA for recovery. I would be more than happy to come back down here and use local auditoriums and present.
Great. Please consider that, and we will. I have your information. We'll get with you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
And God bless all of you, and please, good luck.
Appreciate it. Mr. Alderman Aster, do you have somebody?
Oh, yes. Aaron, would you come up for a minute, please? Mayor, members of the board, come up. This is Aaron Marshall, and he is the incident commander for Team Rubicon, which is in town.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure you weren't expected to do this. Could you give us a briefing as to so far how many homes if you had that information off the top of your head?
Yes, sir. Well, first off, thank you so much, Alderman Aster, Alderman Bangle as well, Mayor Outlaw. You guys have been absolutely outstanding. I can't say how much I appreciate the community here in New Bern for welcoming us, especially after our services ended in the military. I represent Team Rubicon. And we're a veteran-led disaster response organization. We utilize the skills and experiences of U.S. and allied military veterans alongside of first responders to rapidly deploy emergency response teams, very much so in the same way here. So thank you again so much. We have assisted 65 families so far here in the city of New Bern, about 155 all throughout Craven County, down in Havelock and other areas as well. But here specifically we're doing chainsaw work, damage assessment, so going and taking a look alongside of our partners at the Red Cross to get continuity of services. Muck out, which is taking all of the damp parts of your home or parts that have been affected by the floodwaters. We're taking those out. And then also utilizing our heavy equipment that we've got generously donated by Case. They've come in with 2 pieces of heavy equipment that we're looking to work alongside of the city to action on and help out as best as possible. Again, if I could implore the community, there's a 1-800 number which has been on here. This is great that it's on there, that 1-800 number, 1-800-451-1954. That's the way to request Team Rubicon assistance, as well as any other member of what's called the VOAD, the Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster, which Mike brought forward as well. Great organization, big consortium of everybody willing to help, and we are very, very thankful for the community here. If y'all want to volunteer, or if anybody else wants to volunteer alongside of us, we are right next to the New Bern Fire Department headquarters, which has been graciously provided to us. We've been staying there. It's real, real nice. And come on out. We'll get you in a T-shirt. We'll get you dirty with us. 8 o'clock in the morning, if we could have long pants and boots, we'll take anybody. Y'all come out and volunteer with us, and we'll make it happen. And again, thank you so much to the city of New Bern. We really appreciate it.
Aaron, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys choosing New Bern. I know you're all over the United States. In fact, you've got a team being deployed to Indonesia as well now. Is that correct?
We did. Our national office sent a team to Indonesia. We also have teams currently in all throughout eastern North Carolina, Lumberton, Wilmington, here in New Bern, Rose Hill, and also Fayetteville. So we're looking to help all eastern North Carolina. For me, it's really personal. I'm from Gaston County, from right outside of Charlotte. So it means a lot to me to be helping fellow North Carolinians, especially in their time of need.
Well, again, thank you very much for choosing New Bern to come to and help out. And I have to say this, I've been helping Team Rubicon a little bit with some hot meals at nighttime. I'll call on any of the churches or any of the restaurants. There's usually between 50 and 75 people there. They've had a couple of nice hot meals, but I was actually on a job site with them for lunch one day and saw one of the guys break out a Spam sandwich. And I knew at that point in time we had to try to find them some food. So if any of the churches would like to step up and cook a dinner for them one night, at least I'm trying to get them at least one good hot meal a week. So
Spam is good though.
I mean, well, it might be. It might be. But,
That's the struggle
and
meal.
Aaron, I would like to present you with this.
And Aaron, I just have to point out that I gave Aaron a little history lesson. When he told me he was from Gaston County, I said to him, do you know why it's Gaston County? And he didn't know the answer, but I told him that it was named after William Gaston, who's a native New Bernian. Actually showed him where the house, pointed out where his house is, his law office, and so that was his connection. So it was good to, you were meant to be in New Bern. You're welcome, thank you.
We thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor,
Alderman Best,
Yes.
right here.
Mayor, I have a gentleman here, Mr. David Laws. He's from Red Cross, and he is now currently over at the West New Bern Shelter, and I would like for him to give us some information if he would do so.
Sure, I'd be happy
Thank you.
to. Thank you, Mayor and Alderman. Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. For all of you, we have had over 610 people in shelters in North and South Carolina here just 2 nights ago. About a quarter of those are right here in New Bern and down in Cataract County. We had right now about almost 100 in our shelter there at West New Bern Recreation Center. These folks are doing well, but not great. They are starting to get nervous. It's been a while. And they're starting to think, when are they going to kick us out? We have no intention of kicking them out of the shelter. But they know that it won't go on forever. So they're looking for any help they can get. FEMA and our caseworkers and others, HUD has been over. We're very eager to get them any help we can. Mr. Rapp talked about caseworkers who came in who dedicated themselves to these people. And really we could use that. We could use people who would come in as social workers from the city who just spend time getting to know and trying to one-on-one help each individual resident of that shelter. So I'd like to encourage that. If it's possible, it would be wonderful. Our caseworkers are, whether they're FEMA, whether they're Red Cross, whomever they are, they're just here for a little while and then they have to go back home again. And so they don't really get to know these folks. They really don't know their lives and what they really need. So I'd encourage that. We're still feeding meals to these folks. We're now to the point where the Southern Baptist kitchen that we were working with is closing down for the shelters, but so we're going out to caterers and to firehouse subs and to others to get food for these folks. And we pay them and bring it in and make sure they're being fed well. We're making sure that the kids have some amount of entertainment. And again, I would encourage anyone, if you have ideas about maybe a YMCA or other organization that might want to come and take kids on a little outing, that would be great. We encourage that, and we like to make sure that the kids have some amount of entertainment while they're in the shelters. So that's about it from the Red Cross. We're doing everything we can. We'll continue to do it as long as we can. And so thank you, unless you have any questions.
Does the board have questions?
I just had a comment. I just wanted to say I appreciate everything that you guys are doing over there in that shelter. And then it's just ironic because I was able to speak to one of my colleagues. His name is Kurt Stewart, and he runs the Omega Center, and he was there yesterday, but he called me and he was like, we have to get something together. So we're going to plan on coming out there once a week. We're going to try and get bounce house every time so the kids have something to do, get a DJ, and we're going to cook. So we're working on it, so let them know that
I will let
some
them know that.
entertainment is going to be coming.
That's terrific, and Curtis Stewart is wonderful.
Yes.
He's been a real godsend to those folks, so thank you for that.
Can you give the information about the program that Red Cross started on Thursday last week?
Yes, it's not a big program, but it is done from the donations that we received from donors specifically for Hurricane Florence. The people whose homes were destroyed and were identified by FEMA as being destroyed or having major structural damage, and there's a definition of that, will get $600 per family to help them. Obviously, that's nothing in comparison to what they really need in order to rebuild their lives. It's a little something to kind of help tide them over. After that first phase is done, then we'll do the same thing with those who have opened Red Cross cases and those, but did not get money from FEMA. So the Red Cross, again, if they were defined as totally destroyed or major damage, we'll give them $600 as well. And then we'll go on a search for others that may have been missed as our phase 3. This will not catch everyone, and I guarantee, as it has happened in Houston, that sometime along the way someone will talk to the newspapers and say, I never got my $600, and we'll seek them out and try to find out what the problem was.
David, I want to thank you too, because everybody needs to know from the minute the storm started, Red Cross provided the city elected officials with a liaison, starting with Mike Brown, who was the first one I met, then Josh, then yourself, and that has made a world of difference. I know to myself as an elected official, having one go-to person with Red Cross, you've answered all my questions. Everybody has been beyond helpful in assisting us as we need it. So I really want to give you guys kudos for everything that you're doing, because you've been great to work with. You're there when we need you, and you're responsive, and I really do appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, is there any way possible we could ask the city manager to please reach out to the county to see if they could provide some mental health assistance over there, or some social service workers to just walk around and talk to people and see if they could be some of assistance? I know if we go through the Incident Command Center at the EOC, the state should actually provide some mental health assistance as well. So we definitely need to get some people in there talking to them.
That's a great idea.
Yep.
So,
I agree. Just to allay their fears, that would be
right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Alderman
Thank
Best,
you.
for asking.
Did any of the board members have anybody else they wanted to bring up to kind of add some things? Okay. Seeing none at this time, we will go to requests and petitions of citizens. And the first one I have is Margie Adams. If you would come up, Margie, and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Margie Adams. I live at 101 Marietta Avenue in New Bern. I want to thank you all for what you're doing. I do have a concern. I'm wondering if there's any type of program that's going to be put together for people that may have health issues from Hurricane Florence, where there's standing water. It only takes 48 hours for the bacteria and from the mold and stuff can get into the lungs. I know this person that was in the water rescuing people, and they had a rash growing on their left leg. So I'm just wondering if there's any type of program that these people are going to be able to go to and get medical care for people that have knowledge of this.
Well, the first one I would say would be the health department itself with the county. And of course, the city and this county are working in a partnership to try to make sure we're not, this is what part of our presentation tonight is, and this is good that you brought this up, but I would think that the first place would be our health department. That would be a good source. The Mercy Clinic would be another. And again, the city of New Bern is partnering. Mike, did you run into this with Hurricane Sandy?
Absolutely. I mean, we had serious bacterial infection situations and stuff, and what we would just tell people to do is go straight to an emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these bacterial infections are
Get
so
to the podium, if you will, Mike, if you want. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Board have any comments?
Thank you, Mom.
Also, can I just say that now, I don't have any damage in my house, but the outside, the aluminum siding is all green and molded. Is that what you're talking about as far as getting that clean? Is that gonna hurt in the long run? Because I have grandchildren that cannot.
Well, if what you see is green growth on the outside of the house, pressure wash.
Okay, great. Thank you again.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Next speaker, and I might get this wrong, so just correct me. Lanchia Shalasan? Did I pronounce it?
Is that Laura Schaffhauser?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I just,
Way off.
I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Lorelei Schaffhausen. I live at
Yeah.
511 Metcalf Street. And first I'd like to say I am so proud of each and every one of you. You have done a just amazing job of not only coordinating things and communicating, but helping to keep people calm. So I just really have to express my gratitude for all of you and for city staff. But I came today as a relatively new member of a group called the Craven County Disaster Relief Alliance. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they actually have existed in this county for a while now and have been working on Hurricane Matthew. They have begun meeting with regard to Hurricane Florence on the first and third Thursdays at the United Way at 10 o'clock. This flyer is from that organization. That organization exists because we are still in the crisis phase of hurricane recovery. It's going to take us 3 to 5 years to get back on track. We want to be sure that the information gets out, that people applying for FEMA have to do so before November 13th. If you do not do so and you find a problem with your home a year from now, you won't be able to get anything. We also want to be sure that people understand the crisis line that Team Rubicon is talking about, the numbers here. They were going to shut down tomorrow, but they have extended until November the 2nd. It's a real shame for anybody to pay for gut and muck and gut, I guess they call it, right? Okay. Because there's many people willing to assist with cleaning your home out and picking up your debris. The other thing we want to be sure people understand is that when an individual applies for FEMA and they move your application over to SBA, if you are of a low income, please fill out that form. You will be turned away from SBA back to FEMA, but if you do not return the form, your application will go in the dead file. We have instances of low-income people who are getting the paperwork back and saying, I can't afford a loan, and just dropping it. That's not going to be of any help to them. With regard to longer-term relief, I do want to say this organization has started committees, one of them which is on emotional and spiritual well-being in the long term. And that's going to meet this Monday at the United Way at 10 o'clock. So there's plenty of opportunity. I'm going to be on the case management committee as well as we try to help people become whole again. We would ask that the city find someone to sit on this organization as we move forward to look at how as a town, we all become whole again. I also would like to bring to your attention that mental health needs are starting to be addressed. There is workshops or sessions being held at Centenary on Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and I'll pass this flyer around for people so that they can get that information out. And with regard to healthcare, I'm sure Carolina East would be happy to bring their stuff out, set up a tent, and hold a clinic at Mumfest if somebody would ask them to do it. I'm also sure that if the sheriff were approached, there was a Badge, Faith, and Fun Day ready to happen. All those churches that had volunteered to do things with kids, I'm sure he could easily mobilize them to come out individually on a weekly basis so that there's more entertainment for kids. That was all set to go. They had all their supplies and everything. So there's lots of creative opportunities for us to support one another, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you. Our next request for petitions is from Catherine Adolph.
Mayor Outlaw, members of the Board of Aldermen, staff, just to echo how proud we are of how you have handled this situation. We're all in this for the long term. This is not going to turn around tomorrow morning, but the sun will rise, and we will get up, and we will continue to go forward.
Kathy, you need to state your name and your address for the record.
Gotcha. My name is Dr. Catherine Adolph. I reside at 210 Metcalf Street in New Bern. As you know, I am a retired school principal and current president of Bern Investment Group, whose work has been to invest in the revitalization areas of our community. That work has focused exclusively for our small company in the Renaissance Gateway corridors and the footprint of the Choice neighborhood. As a previous commissioner on the Housing Authority Board and co-chair of the Housing Task Force for the Choice Neighborhood Initiative, as well as being an ardent creator of affordable housing on a very small level and a community activist, I feel compelled to say a few things to you tonight. Tonight, the New Bern Housing Authority will present to you housing needs for residents in Trent Court in the aftermath of Hurricane Florence. While I have not yet heard the formal presentation, all of us in the community affected by the devastation of Hurricane Florence feel the pain at a very deep level for all of our citizens, rich, poor, black, white, brown, yellow, red, all who have lost their residences. It is heartbreaking, and to the point of mental health services and to all the social workers and teachers and community people here and in the community, please come out in force. As we know, thousands in New Bern lost their homes. You get that, I get that, we all get that. Our world turned upside down, and the ugly truth now is starting to unravel, and the pain of our situation will continue to be front and center to the recovery of bricks and mortar. Our small town has had a shortage of affordable housing for decades. And now, in the face of this incredible catastrophe, almost every single organization out there doing good, of which there are many here and throughout the country and probably from other countries as well, including the New Bern Housing Authority, are all scrambling to assist displaced citizens to find shelter. With that as a backdrop, I would like to suggest a few things. We simply cannot and may not do business as usual. In the decades that I have lived in New Bern, I have watched with tears as families, children, elderly, flood in Trent Court, hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. And I guess it will take this catastrophe to stop that cycle. While this is not new news, residents were told over and over for 2 years during the choice neighborhood planning process that the federal government would not rebuild flooded properties at the Housing Authority. And 70% of Trent Court then is 70% is in the floodplain, probably more than that now. And so here we are again, obsolete public housing flooded with mold and toxins growing each second. And I still see children and families there. The physical and psychological damage to children in these events is highly predictable, and for all that we wish that it didn't happen, it is. So what can the city do? What can municipalities do to help? I would suggest that the city-owned property at Carolina Avenue be transferred to the Housing Authority for its development at no cost, so that the development can begin as soon as possible to create additional inventory of residences. As I understand it, the city paid nothing for the Carolina Avenue property, which has been discussed before this board and within staff ad nauseum probably. A straight transfer of title of the Carolina property to the city, from the city to the Housing Authority, would go a long way in assisting displaced residents, not only from the Housing Authority, but residents throughout the city, to get decent housing. A small step, and it won't happen tomorrow, but a step forward. Let us not delay these efforts or waste more time or energy. Make a motion, take a vote. Please do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to go to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at items 4 through 6?
Move we approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Odom, seconded by Alderman Bennett, to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. Mr. Stevens, let's go to item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. And by the way, we have 2 items that we need to add to the agenda that are disaster relief related.
Where would you like to do that?
We can do those at the end if that
Okay.
would be pleasing to the board. So we need to add those 2 items at the end. Item number 7 is a presentation by the New Bern Housing Authority on the Trent Court housing. At the request of several members of the governing board, we have representatives with us tonight from the New Bern Housing Authority to present and discuss the current housing needs of Trent Court with regards to the aftermath of Hurricane Florence. So at this time, I'll ask them to come up. I think Mr. Blaney, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, is here, as well as some of his board members. So at this point, we'll ask them to come up and provide an update and presentation.
My name is Joseph Anderson. I'm Chair of the Board of Commissioners of the New Bern Housing Authority. And Mr. Blaney.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Martin Blaney. I'm the Executive Director of the New Bern Housing Authority, currently located at 1126 Walt Bellamy Drive, New Bern, North Carolina. I was asked to give an update on our situation at Trent Court. First, because I'm afraid I'll forget it, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the city staff, the departments that worked with us in the cleanup so far. We couldn't have gotten as far as we have without that help. I also want to express our appreciation to the first responders, the faith community, and all the volunteers that helped us. We had literally dozens, if not scores or hundreds of volunteers helping us for every day for the first 2 weeks after the event. I also like to express my appreciation to the residents of Trent Court. I'm very aware of Facebook and other media. But the residents of Trent Court have been cooperative. They have been very, very accommodating and even gracious. And I appreciate their help. Now, I was asked to provide an update. I think I'll break this up into maybe 4 categories. The impact. New Bern Towers, which is where I weathered the storm. New Bern Towers fared fairly well. We had, we lost electricity, came back on Saturday. The generator fired up as it's supposed to. And unfortunately, the residents lost some autos that were parked in the lots because of flood. Other than that, New Bern Towers is fine. In Trent Court, we lost 108 apartments, 108 households. That's nearly 1/2 of our inventory of 218 units. Some of these apartments had over 5 feet of water in them, over the appliances, over the HVAC units, over the kitchen cabinet bases, and in some cases it was even over the electric panels. Our office was completely destroyed. The high water mark in my personal office was 56 inches. Files were lost even though we had placed them high. IT, electronic stuff, it was destroyed even though we thought we had placed them high. We did not know that heavy tables could float. Following the event, my staff was at work 8 o'clock Monday morning. The first thing we did was assess the damage and try to get a count on our residents. After assessing the damage, the first thing we wanted to do was to get a mitigation firm, which we did when we approached them. They said their quote was prohibitively expensive. We simply couldn't afford it. So on Tuesday morning, we began emptying out apartments. We began de-sliming apartments. We started taking out destroyed furniture, waterlogged clothes, filth and slime. Everything you can imagine from the river flood. We did that for 3 reasons. One, it was the first step to restoration of electricity. We also wanted to assemble the trash and debris on curbside for the removal, because we had profound concerns about sanitation and hygiene. And I want to thank the people in here as well as the people on the Board of Aldermen that helped us with that. And probably the last reason we went and started doing it ourselves was to get that cost and mitigation down. Because no matter how good we did at mitigating, we're still amateurs. And we knew at some point we would have to have a professional come in and do it, so we would have that certification in our drawer. All that work's been complete. We have been in contact with mitigation firms, and yes, the price came down considerably to a cost that we feel that we can afford. Now it's simply a matter of going through the logistics of securing a contract, getting approval, and getting the people to work, getting the firm to work. We don't have a timeline for the total completion of this work because we don't know how much it may involve. We don't know how many units, how many buildings may be involved. Some buildings have been damaged more than others. So obviously, we would start with the buildings that were not damaged so severely and proceed from there. The buildings that were not damaged so severely, obviously, the work is going to go faster. And we expect if we get someone on next week, which could be very, very possible, we can start moving people back in within 2 to 3 weeks. We've been trying to keep in touch with our residents as best we can. You can imagine our residents are scattered throughout the 4 corners. But we have phone numbers, and we do canvass residents. We canvassed this past weekend and we found that 3 were in a motel or a hotel. 10 have vacated or intend to vacate and not return to Trent Court. 16 have returned to Trent Court as unauthorized, I suppose you would call them unauthorized residents. They have nowhere else to go. And I was not prepared to bar the door to prevent their return. 58 are living with family or friends. And to the best of my knowledge, I was at the shelter today talking to Trent Court residents. We only have 3 left in the shelter, 2 of which we plan on relocating within Trent Court, perhaps as soon as Friday. We also have other residents who have relocated within our existing inventory. We have 2 seniors that relocated to New Bern Towers, and we have another 2 young ladies who had sought refuge in our social room at New Bern Towers. We've relocated them to units that were not affected in Trent Court. Now, we're not talking about big numbers, but you take a little bit here, a little bit there, put them together, and we're making a little bit of difference. I mean, we're not talking about Riverside numbers or National Road numbers. We understand that. We understand that. We're 108. But my board, to us, they're the most important 108 we have right now. Those numbers may not add up to 108, I don't know, but if we didn't contact everybody. Some folks we just couldn't track down. And these numbers are extremely fluid. They change from week to week. We would hope that from the next time we do it, they would be changed into more favorable numbers. As far as the future, as far as a permanent solution or disposition, Ms. Adolph was correct in a lot of things she said. Now is the time that we get to consider the future ramifications of what we do now with Trent Court. For our part, I mean, that's a decision of my Board of Commissioners and the Board of Aldermen. For my part, I plan on continuing the mitigation to get as many of those people that are out there back into the units that we can turn as soon as possible. We're going to continue to rehouse affected residents into vacancies that we have through natural attrition. They do occur. Like I said, we've successfully done 4, and we're going to have 2 or 3 more, hopefully by the end of the week. Little numbers build up. Other options we have is demolition. Demolition of part of Trent Court and the securing of housing, what do they call them? Housing replacement vouchers from HUD. We've appealed to HUD for disaster relief vouchers. And of course, we've appealed to FEMA. That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Blaney,
Yes.
was it 18 residents that you said has moved back in? And I know you discouraged them from doing that?
Yes, approximately 16.
16
But,
residents?
Alderman Aster, I believe on any given night you could go down there and see 12. On another night you may go down there and find 24.
And they have electric, but they haven't been mitigated, correct?
We have mitigated them, much to our surprise. We have seen no evidence of mold return. But like I said, we're amateurs. We cannot hang our hat on
Sure.
what we did. But right now, we have seen no evidence of mold. In fact, we've gone through, this would have been 2 weeks ago. We started that effort Tuesday after the storm. And we've gone back and actually peeled off paint, looking for mold behind the paint. We haven't found any.
And you have encouraged them not to be there, isn't that correct? And
Yes,
also told them that there's a shelter that they could go to.
Oh, yes. Certainly did.
I just have heard so much about these people, from people that don't even live in the community, talk about how people are living there in the mold and stuff like that. And I know for a fact that we've encouraged every one of them to move into the shelter if they didn't have anywhere else to go.
Yes, in fact,
and discourage them from being in a house without electric and with possible mold.
Right, correct. Now, we were concerned about allowing people back in. On the other hand, I don't think there's any way we could have prevented them. I don't know if that would have been the charitable thing to do, let alone the legal aspect. That's someone's home, and they want to get home. And I don't want to be the fellow that's going to stand out there and bar them from reentry. But we did do some common sense, and we gave them a flyer that says you come back at your own.
Did you have them sign a waiver?
Excuse me?
Did you have them sign a waiver?
No, we do have waivers. Now that we're getting to a little critical mess, we will go around and try to get them to sign waivers. Yes.
Mr. Blaney, several questions. One, are these expenses reimbursable by FEMA? So, again, we have things where, picking up trash, whatever, we have reimbursable expenses from FEMA. So are your expenses reimbursable from FEMA?
We are approaching this effort as if all of our expenses are reimbursable.
Okay. Because I would think then you wouldn't worry as much about the cost as getting the job done.
And soon after the event, I didn't know who the best source would be, so I thought floods. And I thought of Houston. So just on a wing, I just called up the executive director of the Houston Housing Authority. And he said that they spent millions in Houston and submitted millions to FEMA. But to date, they've only received $400,000 back. I don't think that I want to conduct my affairs as if we're going to get 100% back. The other thing is that I also understand that FEMA may grant authority to the state to dispense monies to jurisdictions and housing authorities through the Community Development Block Grant Program. I don't know how the housing authority would fit into that perspective, but it would be FEMA money channeled through HUD, so I would like to go after that as well once I can find more about it from the HUD or the Raleigh folks.
So I want to make it abundantly clear to the citizens and to the people, because time after time after time in things I'm reading and hearing and seeing, I keep people saying, well, why isn't the city doing this? Why isn't the city doing that? And I want the citizens to understand, we do not own, the city of New Bern does not own the housing authority.
No.
The housing authority is a separate, independent unit. So you are, in essence, the landlord. And the citizens that reside there rent from you. So you are the one that is responsible for their units, their dwellings. Is that correct? I
That's
just want to
correct.
make
I
sure.
mean, we are a, what would you call it, a semi-autonomous political subdivision of North Carolina.
Right. But I just want, because there has been a lot of confusion. But with that being said, they're still our citizens. We are still their voice, and they ask us to be their voice. So that's why I, myself, Alderman Harris, the mayor, Alderman Aster, we have been at your doorstep since this event happened. And we were at the doorstep on Saturday, Friday. Some of us were there Thursday night. Alderman Harris was, but on Friday, as soon as it cleared, we were there dispensing food and water and trying to meet the needs of the citizen. Where you said you didn't come to work till Monday, that was concerning to us, because that was 2 days after the storm, so it was concerning. So I just want to set the record straight that we were trying to assist the citizens with food and water and basic needs. As far as people, being housed.
If I may interject here,
Yes.
I just want to make it clear that I stayed in
I
New
know
Bern
you did.
Towers during the event. I saw Miss Harris Thursday.
Right.
Thursday
I
night.
understand that because I was in touch with you
I didn't
Thursday
go
night
until
as well.
Saturday night, and I was back on Sunday. What I meant on Monday, but that was the first time I could assemble a team of employees and put together a group of not only maintenance employees but also day laborers.
Right.
Most of which came from Trent Court, many of whom may have a record. They may have come from programs throughout that we have in this city for offenders. And those guys have been with us since Monday or Tuesday of that week, and they've done famously.
That's awesome.
That is. And we appreciate everybody that has come out. We've had so many groups come and assist and receive phone calls from people who've come into the area. I know we got East Carolina basketball team down there, and they were able to really speak to the children and interact with them, and they even got some sneakers and shirts and other things, and food was donated. So I know Alderman Harris has done a lot to try to get food to that area, and we are appreciative. Schools, many of the school teachers and groups that were concerned about the children there were also out, and I just a big thank you to them. But
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, going forward, you have got to have a disaster plan. You've got to have a written disaster plan. I've talked to many organizations that had one, and it was easier for them to go through this process once it happened. So there are steps that we all can work together to know, so we know where the residents are. When you talk about these numbers, are these units or are these people? So when you say you have
108 households. It's
okay,
units.
so when you said 58 are with family or friends, 58 units, that doesn't represent 58 people, correct? Just want to make sure.
58 households.
Households, okay.
A household could be from 1 to 5.
Stuff like that. And I do want to also let some people know that we have been in contact with the Housing Authority in Greenville and Farmville. I know you've made some phone calls and trying to find some alternate housing for people that feel that they're ready to.
They have.
Yes,
They
and
have.
I know they have. I've assisted one young woman in getting over to Greenville and settling in there, and so.
I think that, I don't know if I mentioned it, 4 families, 4 households have relocated to other eastern North Carolina housing authorities. And my understanding is that 3 of them were in Greenville and 1 was in Aden.
Right.
Well, I know I personally worked side by side with many of their temporary employees over there, and there were some hard-working young men.
They were.
So,
They were. I'm very proud of them, and some regular maintenance folks are a little bit long in the tooth, and they have trouble keeping up with those guys. It's incredible.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Alderman Kinsey, do you have a question?
It's from your presentation that you just given us. What type of partnership would you be looking for from us, from the city of New Bern, to start to participating with you?
I think it's time to implement this C&I transformation plan. It's time to start. And I think, I don't want to speak for my board, but I would think that it may be time to take some positive action, maybe some representatives to meet. Mr. Anderson?
First of all, I was remiss in not thanking the entire board, the mayor, the staff, and the city manager for all the help that you've given us, a lot of the direction and leadership that you offered us in a very difficult time. I would also like to thank Ms. Kathy Adolph for her presentation. Saved me repeating that. In terms of a long-range plan, what you heard from Ms. Adolph is our long-range plan, to not repeat this cycle every single storm. We probably could have done better in some respects, but there was a lot of stress going on, as everyone is aware, and we did the best that we could. In terms of going forward, what we immediately need is to be able to continue to work, continue the mitigation. We have to husband our budget very closely, because you can easily drain your treasury by hiring the wrong mitigation company, putting and throwing good money after bad in terms of mitigating those buildings, those units that are probably going to stay offline because they are so damaged. It would not make good financial sense to reinvest in those buildings once again and then put people back in them, and the next heavy rainstorm, let alone a hurricane, will flood them once again. So we're sort of determined to not do that. We have an application into HUD to see if we can get emergency vouchers. We haven't heard back yet. Mark was very helpful in drafting that letter. We appreciate that greatly. We know you've met with several representatives of state government and local representatives to help us get emergency relief. So we're just doing the best we can with what we have right now. When I talk to the residents, they seem, I won't say satisfied, nobody's satisfied with the situation, but they understand what we're dealing with. I think we did have some outside agitators come into the community and try to use this as a moment to stir things up and make them worse than they really were, even though they were pretty bad. So we have to factor that in as well.
So, sir, how many units were actually lost?
108 units.
108
Yes.
units were lost?
Yes.
So that's what, about?
Yeah, it turns out to be there are about 5 or 6 buildings that we think should not be turned back up, that should be left vacant. Because if you put the people back in there and spend the money, those are the ones that are closest to the water, more susceptible to flooding, and we don't want to do this again. So we have a moment where people are out of most of the units. Some people have snuck back in, but most of those units that we want to leave off are off and are without power. We'd like to leave them that way.
So those residents received the voucher from you, or that's in
We
the
don't
process
have the
of coming?
vouchers yet. We're waiting to hear back from HUD, and hopefully we're going to get those vouchers. We did put an emergency letter through. Actually, Mr. Stevens drafted that letter. We're very thankful and appreciative of that.
So it's no way right now that you can actually close the apartments down.
We can close them, but we're not authorized to put a bar or a padlock on them. So if somebody comes back at night and opens the door and goes in to get some belongings and they spend a night or two, we have to be humane at the same time. We can't just go in there and, physically throw them out.
So the situation that we've been conversing on about the transfer of properties, where are we at with that now? Mr. Stevens? Where are we with the conversation that we've been conversating with the Housing Authority about the property situation? Where are we with that now?
I had received, some discussion from the board about the possibility of moving forward with Caroline Avenue property. This time, Attorney Davis is going to be drafting up the legal documents as well as towards the sale of the property with the Housing Authority in conjunction with them. As far as what Mr. Anderson was speaking of with regards to our letter, I submitted a letter on behalf of the city and kind of discussing some of the needs of our housing authority with regards to voucher. I think Ms. Best, Alderman Best, to kind of to your point, the housing authority has vouchers that are basically towards their property. Individual-based vouchers or disaster relief type vouchers have to come in the form of through Greensboro or Raleigh or through DC, issued to them to allow for residents to be issued those vouchers to move other places. They don't have the authority to do that at this time. So our letter of request was to our congressmen as well as our senators up in D.C. To commence that discussion so that we could potentially get HUD to give them the authority to issue those vouchers so that we don't occupy those units that are damaged so heavily. And basically meeting the request or meeting the desire of the Housing Authority Board so that residents will not be in an unsafe and an unfit environment living in those conditions.
Okay, now another situation here. Now, what is the process of purchasing the property, developing the property? What type of process are we looking at? 5 years, 10 years? Where could you give me some information?
Just real quick, and I'm going to kind of hit on that. The issue is, and not you guys chime in if you wish, but the issue is right now that there is still an applicant process that needs to be gone through.
Okay.
Some of the desire that we would also be looking to get is for HUD's consideration of expediting that process of application so that they can go ahead and commence the design work, all of their preliminary engineering and architectural work that's necessary, environmentals and stuff like that, so that they can commence that. But ultimately what they're looking to do is a tax credit type property along with their developer Penrose, who at that point would develop the property for them so that you could transition people from unit to unit. Part of those units would be used towards the public housing units. And then that takes time. Obviously, you've got to go through the design phase, then you've got to go through the construction phase. But right now, the application has not even started because they need to make sure that the land is there as part of the application process, and that's kind of where we are now.
Right, and just two more quick points. I don't want to get too bogged down in this. It's pretty detailed, but two things. Number one, the Carolina Avenue property did stay dry during the hurricane. It got wet, but it didn't get flooded. It was not underwater. We did check that.
I checked, I was out there Tuesday.
Okay.
It was dry.
And number two, this application process does have an expiration date. I believe that's late November, early December.
Yes, the application has to be submitted by mid-January.
So if we don't have the application submitted, we will then, delay this process out, another year? Another year? So we are semi-autonomous, but we rely on cooperation and partnership to get things done. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, I do want to thank you, and Mr. Lane, but you especially. I mean, I've met with you, and I know some of these board members 3 and 4 times in the past several weeks, so thank you for your time. You were very gracious, and every time we asked to speak to you, that you were there to listen to our concerns, so thank you.
Thank you very much. And you alluded to it earlier about the roles of the Housing Authority and the city. Well, we never want to lose sight of the fact that our residents are your citizens.
Correct.
They have every right to your ear.
Right.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Attorney, is it reasonable to think that on our next agenda, we can have the paperwork for the transition of sale?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, anything else associated with this presentation? This time, let's go to item number 8.
Mayor, I think item number 8, I'm not seeing Mr. Amerson from the Friends of Kafer Park. If he is, please stand up. I'm not, if that is the case, I'm not sure that they're here to present tonight. So if you would like to go ahead and scratch item number 8 until they can attend to present that to you all.
Item number 9, Mr. Steve.
Okay. Item number 9 is presentation on preliminary plans for use of grant funds received from Marietta Park. This, as previously announced, the city has been awarded the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant in the amount of $475,000 for use at Marietta Park. Mr. Hughes is here tonight. He's going to do a presentation and describe how those funds are going to be used towards the installation of infrastructure and some of the first phase amenities that we're looking for installing here at Marietta Park.
Good evening, Mayor and board members. I do want to cover some things. When we submitted the application for the Part F grant, that application was based on a series of points, and the most points you got determined if you got money. And so our application ended up scoring very high, and it was based on the amenities that we were proposing. So we had $475,000 for this grant, and the amenities include the following: installing a playground, a boat launch for canoes and kayaks and john boats, a fishing pier and a boat dock, picnic shelter and a restroom combination, multi-purpose trail that's at least 8 feet wide, nature observation deck, a nature trail up to 6 feet wide, 2 gravel parking lots, road improvements, some site preparation and support amenities such as signage, trash cans, benches, and things like that. So to give you an idea with Phase 1 amenities, the area you see highlighted in the orange yellow, that's just under 3 miles of trails. That's one of the sections that we'll be doing. These are not paved trails. They're going to be gravel trails. I think at a later phase we can address asphalt or concrete, whatever we want to do later. The other amenities, as you see, it's throughout the 55 acres of property that we recently acquired, with the fishing dock, the general road improvements, and all the road improvements will just be gravel as well. Asphalt would be at a later stage once the park is fully developed. The playground, the shelter, observation, and fishing. That way we can start capitalizing on as much of the property as we can. Do want to let you know that we also applied for a CAMA grant in the amount of approximately $100,000 for a ADA accessible kayak launch out to the Neuse River by the canal, as well as another shelter and restrooms with parking. So we should be hearing about that within the next month or so to see if we were successful. So moving forward, we still have some phases that we're looking forward to working on: the amphitheater, the swim beach area, the adventure area, which we've gotten a lot of comments about, and the boathouse area. So those are all scheduled for future phases. What we are working on now are naming rights and sponsorship opportunities that we'll share with you in the coming months. But we also want to see if the board has any priorities for future phases, and we can also come back and visit this at a later time. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer anything you have. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. In regards to the hurricane, was there anyone that went out there to check to see if anything flooded or any damage, just in case we decide to build this up and have more hurricanes and lose things?
I went out there right after the hurricane, and the area that we would do most of the development in was safe. Okay. So we were very pleased with that.
Foster, I would tell you that, board priorities for the next phase, I really would like to get behind the skate park, because those people the supporters have been diligent.
Yes.
They have got their information together. They have done the research and study, and I believe they would help to get some sponsors and whatever. And these kids deserve a safe place to go and be out there rather than skateboarding down our streets or someplace where they wouldn't be safe. So I'm totally, support that and want to make sure that we move forward as quickly as possible on that.
Okay. If you're asking for our priorities, I reckon mine would have to be the amphitheater. I would love to see that go out there. I think that would be one of the best things that could happen in New Bern in a long time.
Any other questions or concerns?
Mayor, I would echo Alderman Aster's comments as well. I think when you look at this plan, that's obviously the one that has the biggest impact that would, certainly cover all facets of our community. It also has the biggest opportunity probably for naming rights to receive some revenue, and essentially that would also be a revenue generator for not only this park itself but the city overall. So that would be a priority of mine as well.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation.
Now, and just so I can add real quick, Mayor, I will say, we were a little bit hesitant to come and bring this before the board tonight, just because of obviously the impact that we're having here with Florence. It's great that we were able to receive $475,000 towards this particular first phase, if you want to call it that. That was basically, keep in mind, that was a part of the grant that we received where Part-F grants typically require a 50-50 match. So every dollar that is given in grant would require a dollar in some kind of funds from the city or however. We were fortunate in that the property was gifted to us through donation by Martin Marietta, hence the naming of Martin Marietta Park. And in doing so, we were able to take that property and utilize it as our match for the $475,000 of grant money. It would be the intent at some point, if the board so chooses to provide some additional funds towards some phasing, and obviously we will seek out these potential sponsorship opportunities if the board so chooses to do so. But we wanted to kind of give you a quick update with regards to how that money is going to be spent. Obviously, there's a timeline on which that money can be spent, and it needs to be completed by. And in that timeline, we're unable to apply for an additional Part-F fund grant until we complete the other Part-F projects that we have throughout the city. So it's kind of a one project at a time kind of grant opportunity. So it is our intent to try to get to this work as quickly as we can. So that opens up the door for us to look at additional Part-F funding in the future. But at this time, I'm happy, or Mr. Hughes is happy to take any other questions.
The grant that you've recently applied for, is it a matching grant?
On the CAMA grant?
Yes.
It is a matching grant, a 20% match.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This time, Mr. Stevens, let's go to item number 10.
Mayor, item number 10 is a consideration of adopting a resolution to temporarily suspend certain inspection and permit related fees. This is kind of a matter of just buttoning up things that we've kind of implemented, I guess, initially off of some of our impacts here, the significant impacts that we've had of the storm. What we want to do is try to assist in recovery efforts and the ease of which these people have been impacted. What we are looking to do is suspend certain building permits and other fees that are desired for those who have suffered damage from Hurricane Florence. The fees outlined in the proposed resolution are included in your packet. And we're happy to discuss any of those.
All right, does the board have questions? Have you had a chance to take a look at all that? Yes, sir.
Now, early on, Jerry, we talked on the phone about utilities.
Yes, sir.
We had a conversation that late fees would be relinquished.
Yes, sir.
And at that time, that was just before this year. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is this is coming later on, because then folks have to buy, some sort of fees early on when the process.
Well, what happened, Alderman Kinsman, if you don't mind, very similarly to what we did with the utilities, our utility fees and deposits and things like that. At the last board meeting, JR presented that items, and that was retro back to those fees to make sure that our utility customers weren't impacted. Similarly, what we're doing is with our building and inspection fees, just as a matter of business to make sure that the board is okay with it, we want to do the same thing with our building and permits fees.
What I was saying is, I think that why couldn't it all have been done at the same time? But I understand what's happening now.
Right, and this will be retro as well.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I have
So
a
that
question.
covers it.
It says temporarily suspend the inspection. Does that mean the actual inspection?
No. We're not suspending inspections. We're suspending the inspection fees. Inspection and building permit and other fees is what we're suspending, not the inspections themselves. People will still need to call to schedule an inspection if it is necessary, but we're waiving the fees for the inspection for those who were impacted.
It's on there. It's because the way it's listed on the agenda, she's correct. It's incorrect, but in our detailed one, it's correctly stated.
correct.
So I can understand where confusion is.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution to temporarily suspend certain inspections and permit-related fees.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alderman Aster, seconded by Alderman Harris, is that correct?
No, it was Kennedy.
You think he beat you?
He beat me.
Seconded by Alderman Kinsey. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bengal.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Let's start with appointments.
Mayor.
Well, before we go that, I think we had
Oh,
some
you
extra
did?
Yeah, I
items.
do have those other
You
two
wanna do
items that
those
I need to do. And by the way, for both our utility deposit fees and those items, as well as the building inspection fees, once we kind of see that number starting to dwindle down as far as I guess the volume of traffic we are having coming in regarding recovery, we'll bring that back to you so that we can reinstate those as you would expect on normal business. The two additional items that we have tonight, I would go to the first one. They were given to you under separate cover. One is to establish the Hurricane Florence Fund in a matter of accounting, and so that it's very clean for us in our auditing procedures. What we're looking to do, very similarly like special project funds, is to establish a hurricane fund so that we can easily track all of our expenditures as well as our reimbursements once those start coming in, because we're to the point where we have our consultant here. We're looking to start establishing our project worksheet and submitting those into FEMA. So we would like to have this fund established, and that requires board approval to do so. So that's what's before you tonight with the establishment of the Hurricane Florence Fund.
You need a motion on that?
I do. A motion second approval by the board. Yes, sir.
I make a motion that the city of New Bern establish a Hurricane Florence Fund so we can easily track
We
expenditures.
gotta do the other one first, don't we? There's no specific order?
Second.
No, either can be done.
Mr. Davis, are you clarified? You're good with that? Okay, motion by Alderman Aster, seconded by Alderman Odom. Is there discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bengal.
Alderman Bengal.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. The final item we need is the authorization of agents for FEMA reimbursement. As you know, Hurricane Florence came through. The city of New Bern is eligible for reimbursements through FEMA. The city is required to designate a primary and secondary agent through a resolution approved by the Board of Aldermen. The attached form that you have in your packet here establishes and a resolution provided by the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management basically approves and establishes the naming of our accounting manager, Lori Mulliken, as a primary agent, and Director of Finance, J.R. Sabatelli, as a secondary agent of the city. In addition of these named agents, per the direction of the Board of Aldermen, the city is contracting with a third-party consultant to assist with our process here. But this is a required document that we need so that we can begin submitting our project worksheets.
This is a silly question, but JR, why are you not the primary and Lori the secondary, since you're the Director of Finance?
Lori deals with these things on a more hands-on basis than I do, and I felt that it would just be make for a smoother process to name her as the primary agent.
Could I need to ask, who's the third-party consultant?
Do you remember what Disaster Recovery?
Disaster
LLC?
Recovery Services LLC.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Disaster Recovery Services LLC.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize Lori Mulligan as the primary agent and JR as the secondary agent for the FEMA reimbursement.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Aster, seconded by Alderman Kinsey. Is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Aster.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
And Alderman Bengal.
Yes.
Motion carries. Did you have anything else, Mr. Stevens?
No, sir, that's the business for tonight.
Okay, at this time, let's go to appointments, starting with Alderman Bengal.
I don't have any, but I would like, we've had this appointment to the Allies for Cherry Point sitting here. And Alderman Aster, I think you'd be really wonderful to do this.
I don't, I would like to talk to somebody about it first before I accept
Okay.
that.
I would really like to see somebody
if I have
sit
the
on that.
time.
Yeah, sit on that, because it's so important to, Cherry Point is such an economic engine to our county, and right now with the other issues that we've got, we need all the economic benefit we
Sure.
can, so I would ask you to strongly consider that at this time.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll have to serve on the library board.
Anything else? Alderman Bengel?
No, sir.
Alderman Harris?
No.
Alderman Astor?
None.
Alderman Kinsey?
No.
Alderman Vance? Alderman Odom?
No, sir.
Okay, this time let's go to attorney's report.
Mayor, members of the board, I do have one matter to bring to your attention tonight, and hopefully get some direction from you. This is a project that Chief Summers and his team have been working on along with State ALE. We have a club, a bar out on News Boulevard in West New Bern called the Howling Dog Saloon. You may have heard reports about it. It is a place that has been a source of fights, shootings, stabbings. I believe it was one death out there. When these matters at a nightclub get to a certain level, they become a public nuisance. At that point, PD will bring in help from ALE. They'll do some research, look at the statistics, talk to the owner, landlord of the property to see what can be done to improve the situation. I know for at least the last year, PD has worked diligently trying to use various techniques to make the place safer, help the crowd control, and after a number of years, really nothing has come to pass that has been helpful. The landlord, of course, is just simply the owner of the property. She leases to a group that runs the bar. They have come to the conclusion after a lot of very helpful discussion with PD and ALE that they simply acknowledge that they can't secure the place and keep it safe. A tool that we have to ensure that the property is never used again for a bar or nightclub, and that this particular operator won't get a new ABC license to relocate within the city limits, is a public nuisance lawsuit. And we can do that voluntarily. It is actually a lawsuit that we file, but we are also ready, once we file that lawsuit, to go before a judge, all the parties, myself, State ALE, PD, landlord, and operator, explain to the court that we have this problem, and that we've all agreed to enter into what's called a consent order. It's rather than have a trial and have a judge tell us what the answer is, we all agree what the answer is. So this complaint will start that process. What I would ask from you is a motion and direction to allow me and the chief to sign this, to pursue the lawsuit, and then within several months I'll be back before you with a draft consent order to explain to you what we are recommending that the city agrees to along with the owners, get your approval at that point, and move along. Questions, comments?
I make a motion to what you just said.
Thank you.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Bengel.
Alderman Bengel?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Aster?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Motion carries. Anything else, sir?
Thank you, yes, sir.
City manager's report.
Just real quickly, Mayor, we had our press conference, you and I think Alderman Bingham, Alderman McKenzie were there, but just kind of continue giving an update to our citizens regarding our recovery from Hurricane Florence. Just wanted to kind of give a quick update. Our residential, commercial trash and recycling services all running on schedule at this point. We still urge residents at this point to keep their recycle bins and their trash cans away from the debris piles to ease for our cleanup efforts that we have going on in the city. As of yesterday, we've cleared nearly 114,000 cubic yards of debris, and that has been collected and taken to various locations for chipping and ultimately will be cleaned up from there. We are estimating that we have collected approximately 65% of all the vegetative debris that exists throughout the city. Construction debris, we're at 3,370 tons of construction debris that's been collected to date. We're estimating that we have collected approximately 33% of the construction debris that exists out in the city. Currently, we have 41 different trucks that are collecting construction and demolition debris throughout the city. Those coming from various places as far as Hendersonville and Asheville to Charlotte to Raleigh to Harrisburg, Rocky Mount, Garner, Wilson. I mean, they're from everywhere, and we really appreciate the mutual aid support that we're being provided from our other local municipalities throughout North Carolina. We're anticipating that the collection of construction debris is going to continue to take an additional 7 to 9 weeks, probably, depending on the speed of which people get to their homes, mucking them out, getting rid of items that were destroyed, things like that. So it will take some time. People will just bear with us. You're already starting to see, some of the piles, specifically here in downtown. While the major piles may be gone, you'll still see a sporadic pile come back out. Those are people who are maybe a little bit further behind others in getting those items cleaned up in their homes. Just real quickly, just for the public's consumption, streets. We had some streets that were damaged during the storm. We are still continuing to work on our water and sewer and storm drain repairs throughout the city. So if people would just heed the warnings of our cones and our barricades as they are out there. We've already completed one round of mosquito abatement throughout the city. We will do another round probably in a week and a half or so, and try to hit the mosquitoes one more time. Public utilities, our water and sewer systems are functioning properly. Continue to make those emergency repairs. As I said, most of those repairs were in our heavily inundated areas where we might have some collapsed drains, whether those being storm drains or sewer drains. We're in the process of getting those repaired. Electric system is completely up and running for all those customers that are available for connection. We do have some of those customers who have failed, obviously, meter inspection pattern, where they had significant flood damage. I think I reported back last week it was 800 and some. We're down to 726 already, so people are starting to kind of get back online for those who were significantly damaged. So we have about 726 of those left. We've processed approximately 590 permits related to storm damage since the storm. 90% of our permits are being processed and closed out in less than 24 hours, so we're really kind of ahead of the game and trying to get people on that and get them restored as quickly as possible. We urge people, if they've got any kind of building-related or inspection-related questions, contact our inspections office at 639-2942. Our Parks and Recreation Department, obviously they are continuing to do some cleanup. Union Point Park has been reopened. Lawson Creek Park is being prepared for the concert on Friday night. We'll reopen that day for the concert for Mumfest. Glen Burnie Park will remain closed until we can finalize our cleanup and repairs over in that area, but all of our other parks we'll report are open and operating. Our boat launches received some very significant damages, some of our areas, so those will remain closed until we can get those boat launches repaired. Most of them had some significant dock repairs at Union Point, Lawson Creek Park, also at Glen Burnie Park. So until we can get those completely repaired, those launches will remain closed. Staff relocations, Parks and Recreation Administration is at the Aquatic Center, so if you're looking for them, they received some damage over at our admin building. But our building's staff are currently working on mitigating those concerns. They've been meeting with FEMA reps as well as our insurance agents to try to get those repairs done, as well as Stanley White Recreation Center. And it will remain closed until further notice, until we can actually get some repairs done, possibly look at even some mitigation options through FEMA. American Red Cross is obviously, as a gentleman mentioned earlier, they've been operating out of West New Bern Recreation Center, so we have limited programming that's going on at West New Bern Recreation, and obviously no programming that's going on at Stanley White Recreation Center because of it being completely closed and flooded. But at the shelter, we started out with about 170. I think we're down to about 96 now as of yesterday or today. Most of our programmings that we had scheduled that we are running, most of those are our after-school programs. Now the school is back in session for some areas. And if anybody has any questions about after-school programs, please contact 639-2901 as our recreation staff. So please reach out to them if you have any questions.
Go ahead and give us a little update on the preparations for Thursday.
Sure. Preparations for Thursday real quickly. We're looking at, this is Hurricane Michael. Many people have probably been watching the news. Staff's looking closely and watching Michael's storm track, the intensity. Obviously, it really intensified a lot today, and we feel very badly for the Panhandle of Florida. Obviously, we know what they're going to be dealing with because we just recently had that. We will look to increase our staffing levels potentially if there's any kind of changes or impacts Thursday and into Friday. We are not expecting large storm surges like we had in Hurricane Florence for this one, just due to the track that it is right now. The significant part of our storm will probably be more wind than anything else. There's 2 to 4 inches I think they're calling for as far as rainfall amounts, but most of the wind will be coming out of the southwest. Typically that's a good wind as far as pushing the water out. So hopefully with that track that it's currently at now, we will not have any kind of significant issues with storm-related surge issues. However, if that track changes, then obviously we will have to reassess at that point. But normally whenever things cross over land a significant period of time, when you have these tropical events that cross over land from Florida moving up, they lose a lot of steam. But we should still see some wind, some potential power outages, not nearly what we felt with Hurricane Florence. You may have sporadic power outages here and there, but we will have staff ready and ramped up, ready to go. Our tree crews, I think, with regards to our power crews, they're still here. We have a crew from Asplin that has been here working with us ever since the storm, and they will continue to be here throughout those types of events for Hurricane Michael. So that's kind of where we are right now. I don't anticipate us opening up the Emergency Operations Center at this point, but if we need to do so, we obviously will do so. But I don't see that at this point.
Yeah, I just,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Any questions regarding the hurricane efforts as far as cleanup and then the hurricane, and then I have a couple other things I need to.
Alderman Best, go ahead.
I just want to comment on the press conference. There were some aldermen that attended and some did not. So in the future, is it where that you can that the city clerk send out a email to the governing board informing us at a press conference or any meeting that you feel that's pertinent that we need to be in attendance?
Happy to do
I would
so.
appreciate it.
I thought that was done, but
yes,
I thought that was done, but if it wasn't, then I will make sure that happens.
Well, and I made that statement, but I do want to say this as well. I did go on the city's webpage and I did see where it was posted that the press conference was coming up for that Friday. But during that busy time, a lot of us didn't have the time to sit here and go on the city's webpage and look it up. So if in the future, if the city clerk could make us, the governing board, all aware of it, I would appreciate it.
Okay, Alderman Harris.
Yes, I'm on the Facebook Live, and someone had a question in regards to will there be spraying for mosquitoes in preparation for the event on Friday for Mumfest, the kickoff fest at Lawson's Creek. Will we be spraying?
For Lawson's Creek, for the Mumfest, I'm not aware if we had planned to do that. I don't know, Foster, you want to comment on that?
Maybe that cold air coming through will help.
Cold air will help for sure.
Cold will help.
I will say that Swiss Bear is working with the vendor who are bringing in some, basically some mosquito repellents that we're actually going to put around the park on Friday for that specific thing. So.
Okay.
Any more questions? I got two. Just real quickly, I want to ask a couple other things. We have not received a ton of them, but occasionally we will get a financial donation to the city for recovery efforts. We really don't have a great way to track those. I know that Swiss Bear has set up a New Bern Recovery Fund with all of those monies going towards the rebuilding and recovery efforts. I'm looking for a direction from the board to do something with these funds. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of auditing and accounting and things like that need to be done. And so we're trying to figure out some way of how to handle these. We get a $200 check here. We get a $20 in cash in an envelope or something.
Is there any way possible that we could establish a fund for our city employees that's been devastated from the hurricane? I know we got like 8 families. I'm sure somewhere someone has such a fund.
We could definitely look at depositing those funds into our general coffers and then establishing some methodology for those funds that were donated to be used towards those purposes, I guess. I don't know, obviously it's the intent of who sends it, whether we meet those. It's very difficult and cumbersome for us as a government to do that. But I'm happy if we want to do that, we can definitely do that.
Are we talking large sums? Are we talking thousands of
No,
dollars?
like I said, it's a $200 check here. It's a $20, $20 bill in an envelope that's wrapped up by a letter. We're feeling for you. Here's $20 to help you. I mean, it's not saying we get a lot of those, but we have policies in place about how we get, when we receive monies, we have to do deposits and all this other stuff, and it's cumbersome.
My suggestion would be, I remember reposting what Alderman Jeff did, the one that's for the city of New Bern or Craven County, the RCS one. I mean, donating the funds. We know that those funds, if we can't do the employee idea,
I think we could probably do the employee idea. I'm just looking for direction. I mean, you may have 7 different opinions. That's what
The
I'm
fire
trying to do.
department has a fund that's set up for firefighters that have, are in times of difficult and in needs. It might be that we could use that as some guidance or something like that to help set up stuff. And I would really like to see, I mean, we identified some employees that lost everything during the hurricane, and they were out working, and when they got home, they had found out they'd lost everything.
Across all departments.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And so I would love to see some type of a fund set up to benefit the employees, that they could, maybe a committee or something formed to see if they are in need, and pass them out a little bit of this donation money.
So obviously, like we did tonight, JR and I will need to bring some kind of something back to you as far as a fund to do that. So that's why I was talking about the cumbersome nature of which to do it. So let us wrap our heads around it, but if you don't mind, we're going to hold those in a safekeeping spot, regardless of what our policy is. Like I said, most of them is a check or a piece of cash. We'll keep them under locked box in a location that's safe until the point to where we determine how we want to handle that, and then we can come back to the board with a proposal.
My only thing is with a check, how I am, don't get mad at me, I would want it to be cashed. I wouldn't want to hold on to that. Because people do their accounting, that could be frustrating.
And like I said, that's the difficulty I'm dealing with, is we have a policy that says it shall be deposited within a day, and yet we don't, if we start combining it with all of our accounting and all these other measures, it becomes very cumbersome. I understand you'd like, but that's the difficulty. Otherwise, it's just going to go straight into the general fund, and then we have to do transfers and all this other stuff. So we could do that.
Alderman Odom.
Yes, sir, Mayor. I'll let the staff figure out how to work out those logistics, but the hospital actually put together a very similar fund to help with the employees of the hospital, and they had a very methodical explanation and process on how they went through. I'll be happy to get that information and share it with staff. It was an application process where employees can make. That way it was fairly, it was fair in essence for whoever received those funds. So.
Alderman Best.
Mark, I just want to know, can we take, like, from our special appropriation funds, and the gentleman from Red Cross was saying that they're going out into the public now, asking the restaurants for, you know, and they're paying the restaurants for the foods, for feeding the people at the shelter. Can we do that?
It'd be cleaner to make that donation to an RCS with an earmark to go buy dinner for.
Right.
That way we check the box that it's gone to a nonprofit.
Yeah, we have some
Rather than give it to a
difficulty with
for-profit
regards to like helping nonprofits versus helping individuals. So I think that's what you're trying to avoid, is the individual assistance kind of thing.
We can earmark it so that we know it's going for that purpose. It just has to go through another nonprofit. Yes.
So every time you use it, it has to be through a nonprofit?
Yes, that's correct. Otherwise, you're getting money to private citizens.
Well, what if you're there and you do like the hot dogs and, okay, you can't?
Well, I'm not understanding that, because I received monies through special appropriation and I used it for National Night Out. That was serving citizens.
Yeah, I was able to use mine too for National Night Out.
So
National Night Out is a police-led type of an event.
All citizens can participate in
All
that.
citizens can participate.
There was no distinction between individual citizens.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Stevens? Mr. Stevens, what else do you have tonight?
That'll be it, sir.
Okay. Does anybody have any new business tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
You can go down this.
Go right ahead.
I have more comments than new business. I don't know. Can I bring that up at this point, or how are you?
Do whatever. Let's start with Alderman Bingle. Anything you'd like to do?
Well, I'd just like to note that last night we had a Historic District Residents Association meeting, and I think the important thing I want to note is that the Historic District residents, many of the beautiful homes that bring tourists to our community, and many people invest in lots and lots of dollars. They're not easy to keep up a historic home. I know I had one, and my husband made me give it up because he didn't want to take care of it, and it cost so much money to do that. But they are, concerned about the future of the district. Many of the foundations were washed away. It's going to take incredible amount of resources to fix these, and they are asking for resources in the sense of people from the National Trust, people from the State Historic Preservation Office, maybe mitigation specialists who do nothing but historic homes, be gathered together. So I'm working on that with the assistance of Mr. Stevens and trying to bring these resources together so that we can give more information to the people in the historic district on helping them put these homes back together. It's really interesting in that the measure of a storm has always been Ione because it brought so much water, and this just totally wiped that off the face. I mean, you see these foundations that have been there for 100, 150 years, some of them that have been washed away that didn't get hurt by any of the other storms. So I want the residents to know that I do appreciate their investment, and I understand the value of the district, and we're all working together, not only in this neighborhood, all neighborhoods, to try to restore them because they all have value to the city. So I did want to mention that, and of course, I want to mention that Mumfest is this weekend. We hope that it's an opportunity for people to step away from the challenges that they are facing right now and come enjoy, a day maybe seeing friends and neighbors and just getting out in the fresh air. Hopefully it'll be cooler air by then, and people can walk around and visit. We will have a concert at Lawson Creek Park on Friday night. I'm excited to say that 100% of the profits of the monies raised will go to rebuilding houses throughout New Bern. It is administered by Swiss Bear under the New Bern Hurricane Relief. I think that's what it's called. But it's Dan and Shay, and I want to sincerely thank the PepsiCo Foundation and Minji's Bottling Group who have stepped up to underwrite the concert so that all the ticket sales can go towards these relief efforts, and we didn't have to pay for the artist and some of the other expenses. So I really want to thank them for stepping up. Hope everybody will come out. You can go to mumfest.com, I believe, and you can get the information there about the concert and what's going on this weekend. Thank you.
Okay. Two things I just want to say to my viewers or just anyone. Please take heed to the National Weather Advisory for this tropical storm. Just be prepared. And then the second would be to the individuals or nonprofit that organized the truck to be dropped off at the old Days Inn property to provide clothing and furniture and stuff. If you can organize a volunteer group to go over there and pick up the leftover items, couches and stuff, we greatly appreciate it because we would hate to have our city employees go out there because it is a city-owned property to clean up something. We allow individuals to come out there and feed and use it as an event area, but we would like for you to clean it back up because you want to leave it the way that you found it. So there's a couch and some tables that people could probably use. So if there's anyone that's willing to store that, please get it before the tropical storm comes on Thursday because it's going to sit out there. There's clothes, there's boxes. So I'm not sure of the individuals or nonprofit that organized it, but please can you find volunteers to clean it up so that our city employees don't have to do that. That's all I have.
Okay. Alderman Aster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a couple of things. First, this week on Old Airport Road, I know you were contacted by Seymour, but we had a vehicle that was driving down Old Airport Road at obviously a high rate of speed and missed the stop sign, hit the curb, and ran into the gentleman's house on Taberna Circle. This is the third time that his house has been hit from the same type of accidents. So I have had some conversations with the Homeowners Association in Taberna, as well as Bryce's Crossing, and as well as Evans Mill, and we would like to move that we reduce the speed limit on that road from 45 to 35. I think most of the people now it's 45 miles an hour, and I think most people probably run at 55. So if we reduce it to 35, maybe they'll run it at 45. And in addition to that, I would like to ask Matt and the city manager, if they could come up with some design where it would stop the traffic from, if they ran that stop sign, it would stop the traffic from going all the way across the road and running into this gentleman's house. I've talked to the city manager about it already. He's already got some plans going, but I would like to reduce the speed limit to 35 miles an hour immediately if possible, to try to help with some of the traffic accidents at that intersection.
You have to do the same thing Barbara did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a motion?
Except this is a city road, so we can do it without having to go through
Now
the state.
that it's been transferred over to us, it's just, if I receive direction from the board to do so as a whole, then I will work on the paperwork and get that back to
So
you.
do you need direction or a motion?
Just direction from the board to, as a
No,
whole.
I support Alderman Aster in that
I
effort.
do as well.
I do too. I know that in many cases like that, the first thing we do is get the police department to do some research on that, and but I do support you on that, sir.
And I do as well.
But
Thank you.
If you would move right ahead on that. What else do you have?
Thank
sir?
you. Yes. In light of the damages that we received and the possibility of millions of dollars that we may have to spend before we start seeing any money back, which could be a year or two down the road, I would like to suggest that we suspend some of the paving contracts and save that money until at least we can get a handle on what this hurricane is going to cost us. I know there's some of them that we are required to do. I know we have to do something with Spencer Avenue because we have it torn all to pieces, and I know that we're under obligation to do something with Airport Road, but if we can just put a hold on some of the others until we kind of see what kind of money that this hurricane is going to cost us.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the requirement on Airport Road. I think Spencer Road obviously is one. I think completing the existing contract would probably be advisable, along with the addendum we had with Oaks Road. Is that correct? Because we've already issued those out to the contractor.
Yeah, Mark's correct. We currently have a contract right now that's underway. That was part of the FY17 budget. We also have the contract for Oaks Road that the board approved several months ago that we'll be adding as a change order to the existing contract. Then we've also got Old Airport Road. We have a 2-year obligation to do that. We don't look at starting that for probably another late summer, but that's still money that's got to be funded. It has not been funded yet. The other thing we have is, as far as this year's budget, is there's $2.8 million in the budget this year for a paving project. The intention was to do some of the areas that we've done extensive utility work on, such as Spencer and Rim and Middle Street downtown, and then the next priority would be based on the paving study that we did. So I guess if we were to take that 2.8 and we did some of the areas we have to do, Spencer, Rim, Middle Street, and that was it, that's an option, I guess.
Can we reassess this maybe, January or something like that when we get a better handle on it? I don't think, are we in need of looking at that at this moment?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying that we've got we got millions of dollars that we're getting ready to pay out. And it may be, well, we haven't even been reimbursed for all the money from Irene yet, or Matthew. And I understand that Houston has only received 10% of the PWs that they've submitted, or Texas, anything down there. So, and that's been a year ago from that hurricane. So I'm just, we got a lot of money that's getting ready to go out. And I just want to make sure that we have and with a good possibility of some additional hurricanes or snowstorms or anything else hitting us around here. So I'm just was concerned, and I know you're obligated, you have money that's already encumbered, probably, or at least under the contract, but any of the other paving that you're thinking about doing that we haven't bid for yet, we might want to just hold off on it until we can see exactly how much this is going to cost. Mark, you tell me.
Yeah, I think, we will have a pretty significant, I can't remember what the first payroll number was, 2.5, is that right?
$2.8 million.
$2.8 million on the first payroll just for the storm event. you know, with the overtime expense and everything else that we had along with it. Now, granted, 2.8 is the payroll that went across four different funds,
Sure.
but a significant portion of it was in the general fund. But I would, you know, like I kind of suggested, I think we currently have a paving contract that's in place that they've been operating on already. They've already been doing some work on, as well as the Oak Road portion. The 2.8 that Matt has indicated was kind of earmarked for spring/summer work anyways. I think we'll have a heck of a lot closer understanding of what our potential cost and obligations will be, and maybe we could brief in January at our or early February when our retreat is. That will give us an opportunity to kind of discuss it, and then at that point Matt would be able to know whether or not to send out the RFP for any kind of payment.
One thing I would like the finance to do, and Public Works and manager, is look at the fact that, you know, for the next year or so, because of the storm, there's going to be a lot of contracting work, road bids, et cetera, sub-base and that type of thing. So I got a feeling that paving contractors are going to be very busy. So my concern would be that you look at each and every one of our works in progress or proposed works in progress and see case scenario the concern of you put them off and you know save that money for the disaster. How much is it going to cost to rebid that? And with the anticipated workload of paving contractors, are we going to be better off to do an installment loan versus, I mean, I'm not saying what to do. He has a very valid point. I have concerns like Alderman Aster, but at the same time, we have to anticipate the fact that probably the price of doing business for the next year or two because this hurricane is going to be very expensive. Alderman Over, do you have something to add to that? Or?
Manager answer, Mike.
Okay, good.
I think we certainly, Mayor, just kind of point out, we certainly could look at installment loan financing for projects. Obviously, this would be considered real property improvements, so we would have to go through LGC to do that. That's not a problem. It's just, you know, administrative work, which is not an issue. But happy to do whatever the board so chooses.
Alderman Aster, you having been involved right much more so than any of the board members, and with the consultant, do you anticipate that with this hurricane that our reimbursement process will be any more expeditious than Matthew and Irene, or do you anticipate it's going to be just like the other two?
Well, based on what I'm hearing from Hurricane Harvey, it's been slow. It's been real slow. 10%. Some of the figures I've heard was 10% has been reimbursed. So, I mean, we can obviously help ourselves out by, you know, contacting some of our legislators or whatever and putting some pressure there on getting some money released as quickly as possible. But I just, you know, I just wanted to make sure that we have plenty of money. I mean, 2 weeks from now, we could have the same thing happen to us again. So we just need to make sure that we can pay for all this.
I know Alderman Bingle and I have talked right much about just the first ward and heads on bids and that type of thing, and anticipated sales tax versus and TDA funds, which I hope that some hotels that don't normally have high occupancy will have, because some of them are going to be out for a while. So would you mind talking about that a
there
minute?
is concern about reduced sales tax. Of course, the convention center is going to be down for a year. We don't expect it to reopen until September of 19. The DoubleTree today, we got some information that it'll be around the first week of March before that opens. Again, you're losing that occupancy there, plus the sales tax associated with that. The courtyard is slowly opening rooms on second, third, and fourth floor, but that's very just walk-in type traffic right now. Marriott, because their Marriott system is down, they don't have computers, they don't have an elevator, people have to walk upstairs. So that's a reduction. With that being said, every hotel room in Craven County is full. So that's not, we usually have about a 72% occupancy rate across the board. So if we've got a 98% occupancy rate for the hotels that we have, that may keep us even. We're not gonna make anything, but that'll keep us even. Well, that being said, we've seen reduced numbers in the retail section of downtown New Bern. I can tell from the restaurants, we're probably down maybe 10 to 15%. We think the difference is the tourists. Again, we'll see what Mumfest brings. And that could be across the board in other retail across the city. I don't know what's happening, but I think it's something we need to be prepared for and understand that we're going to see our sales tax kind of either level off or decrease.
And we normally, we're looking 3 to 6 months up the road to try to predict that.
Right.
And
Also, did you have something? And then Alderman Best? Okay, go ahead.
Also, JR this is the first time that the city, well, I don't say the first time, but we've had a catastrophic storm like we've had a hurricane. Have you checked with Mr. Antry with Craven County to see if this is going to affect our ad valorem taxes coming in any way? I mean, with those buildings, like she said, being shut down, they're not, are they going to delay the process of them giving them a time period to pay their property taxes or what?
I've heard nothing from the county regarding that. As a matter of fact, I've not touched base with Ronnie regarding that at all. I would not expect them to make any changes at this time, but it's very unlikely that that's going to be necessary because of the due dates and everything. So I expect that they'll probably keep everything about the same.
Okay.
Mayor, if I might, kind of going back to the sales tax and the worry about property tax, sales tax, obviously those are our two primary drivers as far as our revenues that we have here in the city. If there was ever a time that our citizens should be implored to shop local, like we always do, this would be one to do it, because your dollar stays here in Craven County. If you're thinking of going to go shopping at a mall in Raleigh, or if you're thinking about whatever, take a look local first. Obviously, it helps support our local businesses who have been impacted, but it also keeps our dollars local. And that money gets spent over and over, two and threefold. So to that point, when you see a 10 or 15% reduction in the restaurants, you could imagine the retail probably seeing very similar numbers, if not worse, with regards to commercial establishments. So like I said, if there's ever an opportunity for people to shop local, this would be the one to do it, to kind of help support our redevelopment and regrowth of our economy here.
JR, you got a handle, you think, on a close estimate as to the amount of money we're going to be spending as a result of this storm? I mean, is it unheard of to be in the $6 to $10 million range here? You think that's...
It's going to be every bit of between 4 and 6 at least. I think it's going to be a hell of a lot.
I think you're going to look at more at 6 and 7. Irene was a 4.5. I think you're probably going to look at 6 or 7.
So that's $6 or $7 million that we're going to have to pay out, and it could be a year before we start receiving any reimbursements. That's my only concern.
I appreciate that. Alderman Odom?
Mayor, I was actually going to save this comment for my portion of new business, but I'm going to capture the momentum that we've got going on here. I had a brief discussion with the city manager and Mr. Sabatelli, I guess a couple weeks ago, in the aftermath of this storm. And I feel strongly that with our location and geography, we are so susceptible to storms. Not only hurricanes, but I think the last 2 winters, we've had some of the most hard winters that I can remember in my lifetime, which is only 39 years, by the way. She questioned me. I had to show her my license one day. But nonetheless, the fund that we established tonight was $400,000. What I would like to see, us give direction to staff to come up with some number, whatever their expertise would show, and let us create, you can call it what you want, a disaster recovery fund, if that's what you want to term it, but set a certain number aside out of the general, I'm talking about general fund right now, maybe we need to look at utilities too, but right now, let's focus on the general fund. Come up with whatever that number is. I think this is probably our worst case scenario, hopefully, with what we just went through. But if it's $2 million, $3 million, whatever the number is, let's pull that money out of the general fund, put it in a restricted fund that can only be accessed in the state of emergency or declared natural disaster. That way, when we're going through the budget process and we're having workshops and we're talking about, well, we've got a healthy fund balance of 35%, let's go pay $4.5 million this year. we're not really looking at the big picture of what could happen. I mean, right now we're talking about maybe covering $7 to $8 million. All that's not out of the general fund, but I feel like that would give us, it would be an official rainy day fund to where we have this money set aside when an event comes up, we're covered, staff understands that there's a safety net, if you will, from a financial perspective. And what we could do, obviously we're not going to take a bunch of money right now and fund it because we're already putting that expenditure out. But if we created this restricted fund, whenever we start getting those reimbursements, that is the funding mechanism that we could put in this account. I tried to count how many declared emergencies since I've been on the board, and I think it's about 6. And I've only been on the board for 5 years, not even 5 years. So we're averaging about 1 natural disaster a year. So it's not like this is something that funds are going to be set aside and we're never going to access it, maybe every 5 or 6 years. We'll have the ability to do that, but I think it would be financially prudent for us to do that and make sure we have a better, clearer picture of our financial stability. That's a suggestion I would like to see staff come back with.
May I ask a question on that? To take it even further, would we be able to do a restricted fund that has interest, that we can draw interest on that fund as well?
It would be set up to be drawing interest.
Okay. That's
What
good.
is, currently our fund balance is 35%? What's our current fund balance, or before we went into the storm?
Before we went into the storm, the fund balance as of June 30, 2018 was approximately 36%.
Okay, and what did that represent in dollars?
I'm sorry, you're asking me too quick.
Ah.
It's roughly $13 million. Please don't quote me on that, though.
Okay, so, and that was the whole idea. I've always been schooled in the process that's why you have a healthy fund balance, so that you can have that kind of money in the bank, and in the name of danger. So I think we set ourselves there. I mean, restricting it, yes and no, as long as we always know what that number is, I think that's important. Sure. Part of fund balance, but I think then it makes us more cautious as to, our number should be 10 million. If that represents 20% or that represents 40%, maybe 10 million is the number. We should always have that in our fund balance. I would rather be driven by that than restricted by it.
Yeah, I agree, but with $13 million and you're getting ready to spend $7 million, and what would happen in 2 weeks from now, something else. I mean, that's my concern.
Yeah, but even if you set it aside, you would still be in the same boat.
That's all I
restricted it.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Kinsey, do you have any new business?
Yes, I
Yes,
do.
go right ahead, sir.
I can't say enough of thank you to the volunteers and the help, because each catastrophic storm that comes in to plague your city is different. The cost is going to be different each time. You never can set a set price on what it's going to cost. We just have to continue to lift one another up, work together as best as we can to help and elevate and motivate each other to move forward and do the best we can. And you never can say thank you enough to all the staff and individuals that has traveled from all different parts of the country to come in to rescue you. And we just have to continue to reach out and be prayerful that we all going to stick together and help one another. That's all I have to say, sir.
Okay. Alderman Bates.
I concur with everything Alderman Kinsey just said. I just want to, Ward 5 got hit really hard, and I just want to reach out to my constituents to say, please go file your FEMA claims. Please go file your claim with Red Cross. Take time out to do that. If you get denied, don't let that stop you. Go back, file an appeal. Do so, please. Because I know a lot of people are devastated and they're hurting right now in Ward 5. Another thing I wanted to say, I just want to take this time right now to, on a public platform, to let my constituents know that I heard them loud and clear when they reached out to me in regards to the way that the cleanup process was going in Ward 5. They were not happy with the time frame it was taken. And I too was not happy with the time it was taken to come into Ward 5 and start the cleanup process. But I'm just asking my constituents now to please, please be patient. We have working crews in Ward 5 and they are working hard, long hours, trying to get Ward 5 cleaned up. So just be patient. I do understand my constituents. I do understand that a lot of you was devastated and that you're hurting, and I too feel your pain. And just be patient with the city and these cleaning crews, because they are trying their best. They're working hard to bring this city back to a state of normalcy. And I just want to thank the city employees, and I want to thank all of the volunteer groups. I'm not going to name any because I don't want to omit anyone. I don't want to leave anybody out. But I just thank everybody. And I know that this board, mayor, mayor pro tem, city manager, this board, we all work together hard in this recovery effort, and I know that we will continue to do so. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Odom.
Yeah, Mayor, one quick thing. I don't know when the timing will be right for this, but I feel that this particular storm has sort of brought to light some opportunities for improvement on all aspects. Oftentimes, communication seems to be sort of the linchpin in all of this. And while we had some communication with our partners on the county side, I think there's an opportunity to do better. I'll just give you one brief example. We were trying to schedule a 18-wheeler that was bringing some materials in, and I saw on Facebook at 3 o'clock in the afternoon that the county distribution point was closing at 5 o'clock that day for good, for both pickups and drop-offs. So that's just one example. I think we all, both county and city, did a very good job considering the circumstances, but I also think it's an opportunity for us to have some additional communication. And I know when we had our talk about, or discussion about the school resource officers, we said we need to get together with the county. Maybe this is another topic, whether it's the same time or a different time, for us to have some communication with them to make sure that, just as Alderman Bingle mentioned with, the Housing Authority having a plan next time to address these things proactively, when the outpouring from not only this community but across the country was just overwhelming. The day after the storm, we were getting calls about literally 18-wheelers that were en route with supplies, and we didn't know what to do with them. And I think that's something that we need to address. Hopefully we don't have these storms anymore, but I have a feeling that's not going to be the case. Again, Mr. Manager, I remember when he was put in this position, his first year, we had like 3 extreme tragic events, and I said, maybe we're setting a bad precedent, but those things continue to happen. And again, we've got one that's, again, won't have the impact that this last one had, but there is a hurricane coming, and it's coming Thursday. And I don't want people to look at what we just went through and dismiss this as, oh, this is just going to be another, tropical storm. I don't think we're going to have the flooding that we're going to have, but the winds.
Secure your roofs.
Yeah, I mean the wind at my house honestly was not as bad with this last storm as I was anticipating. So I think we oftentimes let our guard down, and I think in a bad situation, a tragic situation like we just had with Florence, I don't want people to think, well, this is just a category 1. Look at what we just went through. You need to heed the warnings and do what's advised. But let's improve that communication with our partners on the county side once this is all settled down. Probably after the election would be a good time. That's all there.
Okay, what else under new business do we need to talk about tonight? Okay, do we need a closed session tonight?
No, sir.
Is there any further business to come forward?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.